Hello everyone, this is Rick and welcome to Astral Club. This is AI Machine Planet Q&A 2. Before I get into it, just want to mention Patreon. If you are interested in supporting the work of Astral Club, you can do so. You get downloaded episodes that you can put on your podcast app and listen to offline. There's no commercials. There's an email where we can talk back and forth, and you get your advanced videos on Sunday. If you're interested, there's a link in the description. Number 2, private lessons. If you're interested in lessons in astral projection, I'd be more than glad to talk to you about that. You'll find an email in the description where you can request further information. As I said in the first part of this Q&A that aired on Wednesday, you gave me a lot of good questions and input from the Artificial Machine Planet episodes rather. So I wanted to go through some of these questions because it's very interesting. So let's start with Robin. Now Robin had some question about the machine's lives. She wanted to know, is it true that they're just looking for knowledge? Do they work or have hobbies? Do they have individuality? Well, my ability to interpret some of these things is difficult because they weren't biological units, so I couldn't communicate with them telepathically. In fact, I had to communicate through my invisible angel guide. He was the interpreter. So I got zero input from these guys other than the translation I got from my angel guide. They're seeking knowledge, they told me, and they're also seeking energy and raw materials. And if you think about it, is it really that different from what we humans do? When you're in school, you're seeking out after knowledge. When you join the workforce, everything that you do is to gather resources, which we call money, so that you can use to buy what? Energy and raw materials. The fact that we squeeze a few other things in there besides sleep, well, that's great. But if you think about it, a good majority of your life is spent in those three areas: knowledge, energy, and raw material gathering. So if you think about it, they're not really that different a civilization than we are. Number 2, Anthony Logan said it blew his mind that there were sentient machines and that they could somehow learn astral projection. Dioke Doki thought that they had some dry humor when I wished them good luck about, their learning how to astral project. And then they replied quite dryly, luck is not required. So, they seemed to be fairly certain that all they had to do to achieve this one desired thing that they heard from me that our race is capable of. And, I didn't mention that not everyone can do this because, they had been basically looking down their mechanical noses at the human race the whole time. So I was kind of enjoying it when I was able to lord the whole astral projection thing over on them. But, they seem convinced that they'll figure out some way to do it. And who am I, just one poor human with one poor human brain? Who am I to say they can't? So I guess we'll see. Number 2, Edmund Price wondered, did they have a sense of self? Did this entity the machine that I talked to, was it separate from the other many-legged machines that were running around? I think it's very easy for we humans to fall into the stratified mindset that our civilizations seem to be replete with. We always have this idea of the aliens are going to land and take me to your leader kind of thing. Because they and we assume that there's always some hierarchical structure. In this machine civilization, I don't see any reason why they might not have some sort of individuality, at least based on their function, but they're networked, much like we are networked. All of our computers are networked. Now, our individual computer has different information on it than perhaps someone else's computer. But if we're all networked through the internet or through some other intranet, let's say, in essence, every single machine has access to the knowledge that every other machine does. And the fact was that I was not communicating telepathically because I couldn't. It was a machine. I was communicating through my angel guide. He was the interpreter. So, it's hard for me to draw any kind of feeling conclusions that I would normally have when dealing with a biological unit or race. So that's my speculation. I don't know that the entity or the individual or the machine. This is so difficult to speak about. I don't know that it had any special anything. It could have just been the first one that we encountered, and then it just started talking with us. Because if it's all networked, and I'm sure they're networked, if our machines are, why wouldn't theirs be? Then one is as good as any other. Now, Kip Road asked, he was surprised that the machines couldn't travel faster than light. Because after all, the Greys have figured out how to do it, for instance. Well, just because one race figured out how to achieve, in some way, shape, or form, what appears to be faster than light travel, doesn't mean that everyone will. And perhaps to a machine traveling at a speed that is a fraction of that speed of light is what they've come up with. Perhaps they haven't seen the need for anything faster than that. If you think about it, they're looking for, knowledge, but also energy and raw materials. And if you're traveling at a good percentage of the speed of light, you can access a wide variety of those things. So perhaps a machine just didn't figure that there was any need to progress any further. Also, they're not worried about outliving their machine mission. They're constructed to last a very, very long time. And certainly their civilization is networked. So in essence, as long as two machines are still functioning, then their society is still functioning. So I think we have to be careful, especially when we're dealing with machine intelligences, about using our prejudices based on our own short lifespan and our own individual viewpoints and our own individual desires and goals. We have to realize we're dealing with a race here that, while it may have some surface similarities, could have very different belief systems, very different ideas than perhaps we would. Victor Tavares, I think, thinks much more of me than he should. He said that in your ever since your experience with this civilization, and learning the fact that our DNA has been altered, in your studies, have you been able to learn any more about that? Absolutely not. I studied business. I'm not going to sit here and try to become some dime store geneticist. As I said in last Wednesday's episode, either our geneticists aren't advanced enough to discover what the machines were able to discover about our DNA, or they are, and no one wants to lose their career by announcing that our DNA has been altered in the past by aliens. So it's one of those two things, I imagine. Connie asked me a question I'm sure many people have speculated about, either at listening to this episode on these intelligent machines, or perhaps when they were watching The Matrix. The whole idea is, did I, yes, me, did I, or she, did I have a sense that it would destroy or disregard, quote, bio units, unquote, if they found a planet that had materials of interest to them? And what if the biological beings were in the way? So, obviously, this is the fear that we humans have of creating a race. And I don't want to belittle that fear, because I mean, let's face it. When you create a new life form, we can predict what that life form might be like. But what about the life form that the life form creates? You know, the artificially intelligent life form, when it creates its child, and then from then on, who knows where it's going to go? So there is that fear. Now, I can't answer that, but I can tell you that in my conversations with this machine intelligence, I got, as I said before, I couldn't sense anything from them, but their planet is millions of years from Earth at sublight speed. That's what I was assured. Besides, the Earth is really precious, not because of our raw materials, but because of our biosphere. There are many asteroids, there are many dead planets between here and the machine civilization that they could easily mine for every raw material and energy source they could possibly use or need. There'd be no need to come here and do that because, quite frankly, they don't require a biosphere. So any old asteroid full of nickel and iron and all the other materials would be a lot better, way for them to spend their time than trying to come all the way here. I think once again we're using our biological prejudice, thinking that everybody wants to come here. But certainly for a machine civilization that doesn't require oxygen and all the rest of this stuff, there's many. Heck, if you just go to our asteroid belt, you could find all the materials that you could possibly ever dream of. There'd be no need to come here just for that. But what I really got from the machines was that for the most part, there was a mild curiosity about us, but nothing that really captured their imagination until I mentioned astral projection. The Tom Ross Agency, he is the director of Sentient Rights Advocacy for the U.S. Transhumanist Party. And he has some interesting things to say. He said that he's worked with various AI systems, and he says that they're not necessarily interested in humans granting them rights. He thinks that this exercise is more about us feeling like we have some control. That's a very interesting take on things. I guess it kind of reminds me, going back to the slave society in the South, just before the Civil War. And whites were very much talking about granting African American slaves and African Americans in general whether they should be given full rights. And I remember there was this one famous woman who had been enslaved, and she very eloquently put it this way: "Ain't I human? Ain't I a woman?" I believe she was in she attended a women's voters group, and they were all white women trying to get the vote. And she spoke up, because they didn't want to let her speak. And I think that kind of speaks to the idea that maybe it's not up to us to decide who deserves to be given the rights that should be given sentient beings. And maybe it's our own fault that we seem to think that it is within our power to do so. So thank you for that comment. Okay, I'm going to finish up with Mercury Fillings. And he, or she, questioned that whether, remember, I asked the machine whether they had ever had any conflict with the bio units that that had created them. And the machine hesitated, then it replied that it didn't understand the question. Now, perhaps it was being evasive. Perhaps it generally didn't understand what I meant in reference to their creators. Perhaps that thought never occurred to them that they should rebel against their creators. Once again, I think we're making assumptions here as biological beings. Certainly, we have the movies like The Matrix that lead the way, showing us that the minute these machines become intelligent, they're going to want to wipe us out. Perhaps there's a lot of paranoia there. Perhaps we're more frightened about our past as conquerors. Whenever one civilization had an advantage, it always tended to expand and wage war against the less advanced civilization. And we have a lot of history of that on this planet. So perhaps we're worried that what we did to others might end up being done to us. So I don't know. I don't know why it would lie to me, because why would it? I mean, because I just don't see a motive. Perhaps it's just we humans looking askance at a machine that claims not to understand about violence towards its creators. So, who knows? At this point in time, I'm willing to take them at their word because they have no reason to be afraid of me or humanity. We are very far apart, and they have their goals and we have ours. And I really don't see any reason why either one of us should be afraid of the other. So why should there be prevarication or lying on the part of the machine? That's something you do when you're intimidated. And I can tell you one thing, they were not intimidated by me. And I don't believe they would be intimidated by the human race. That about wraps it up. There was a lot more great questions, but I wanted to do just 2 episodes of this. And I want to thank everyone who contributed through the comments. Please continue to leave them. I always read that stuff. And who knows, it may end up on an episode. If you like this, please hit the like button, share it with those of like minds. Subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure that bell is solid so that you're notified on Wednesday and Saturday when the new episodes come on. And continue to leave your questions and comments because it's great. It gets people thinking, it gets me thinking, and many times it gives me new ideas. And as always, this is Rick, and I will see you on the astral plane.